First of all, thanks a lot for inviting us here. It's our honor to be part of such a very special audience. And before that, we're digging into a conversation between Andy and Aleksandra. I would like to just give you some insights from our side, focusing the practical implementation of the smart technology. We're definitely talking about an industrial revolution that is like the one of the inventing of the steaming machine. Now, thinking about the adaptation that the human being is able to do, and what for me is very important is that we're trying now to think about today and the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years. We're not going to talk about science fiction and not about Terminators. And I really love the story, and I will also get into these ones. First of all, and this is what you just mentioned, AI is, as per today, used more as a hype, and actually we're talking about a trend. So we actually rather talk about smart technologies, about cognitive technologies. Now, the human being is actually able, if you look at the history, we always found solutions for problems that we invented by ourselves. Thinking about cars. When we invented the cars, they didn't thought that they're going to survive. But what happened after we had the first cars? People came and said, they need to be faster. It's too slow. So what did we do? We built faster cars. Having faster cars, we realized that we have a lot of accidents. People got murdered through cars, got invalid through cars. So what did we invent? We invented the secure belt. Probably we wouldn't have a secure belt if we wouldn't have invented the car. Having secure belt, we were able to drive even faster. This is really great. So the next thing was ABS, was the ESP system, was airbag. These days, who of you has a car without sensors, without parking assistance? This might be an old-timer. Everyone today parks with sensors for parking assistance. This has nothing to do with smart technology. These are just sensors talking to you. Now, thinking about these things, thinking about the question of autonomous cars, where obviously we always have the downside about people who will lose their jobs, taxi drivers, truck drivers, and so on and so forth. I don't want to go into that. But just think about the discussion of deciding whether I should hit a kid or an older people, being actually asked an algorithm, the chance that we're going to get into such a situation is much smaller because the sensors and the autonomous cars, the algorithm are reacting much faster. They're going to detect the potential of such situations much faster than a human being. So for that, I would really like also to give you another example that you mentioned, Alphago. Not sure how many of you know about the Alphago, the game that is based on 19 row. What do you think will happen if we just cut the row and the game is 18 to 18? The algorithm can't adapt this knowledge unless we're telling him, unless we're coding it. An algorithm doesn't care whether he wins or if he loses. If he wins, he doesn't know that he won. He even don't care. This is just the algorithm telling him, by the way, this is your aim, this is your goal. And it's still us developing that. He has no emotion. Now my question is, why actually in the book of Civil Berg is the voice of the devices without emotions, without empathy. And I really liked the section where you said, but I'm sleeping. And the device goes like, no, you don't, because you're talking. I mean, this is just a great example of showing that an algorithm probably doesn't have emotions. Now we can also dig into that the algorithm will be able to detect emotion and also be able to react with emotions. We're not there yet. We have a lot of possibilities. And now I would like to open the discussion with the two of you. And what I really like is, and we're gonna discuss about, is there a difference that algorithms are being developed by man or female? And both of them have a vast experience in software development. And the first question, so I have to put my glasses. By the way, also that is an augmented possibility that the human services. Huh? Oh, a third arm would help too. So, what I would like to start is, how much can we expect from a system? One thing is like, what was the expectation of the system? I would now call it the old IT world, and start with you, Andy, and then see what is the difference to the world of today, of the smart and cognitive algorithms.
Oh, thanks to be invited here. I was never in a church and we're talking about AI, and that's really something's really special, I would say. But on the other hand, probably we have to learn that we have to bring this topic out of the box of technology into society, like churches or museum or whatever, because I think as an engineer we have to talk about AI much more, and all how you call it, doesn't matter if you call this cognitive, whatever, but we have to talk in the society much more how we gonna win or how to using AI technology for us. So for this, it's great to be here and to talk in a church, and that's really something special. But coming back to your question is, probably we have to go back a bit more to the history before we invent any IT or rule-based technology for us. We were normally able to think in, there's some things we were called input to our system, to our brain, and normally there was a different output by the same input. So that's just our mind. That's normally how we think. So if we have the same input at the morning, wake up, or later, there's always a different output in our mind. And then we introduced our system, our industries, and we get along with the mindset, quality is same input, same output, isn't it? So quality is process management, bringing the quality. If you do the same as she do, then it's okay, and that's good, that's maturity. And now we ending up this journey with AI and see, oh wow, it's not anymore. Now it's again what we are normally thinking in our brain, same input is not anymore same output. And even worse, we can't explain why with AI. So if we go to the industry today, to any ERP system in industry, normally same input, same output is what we want. How can we do this with AI if we just have some likelihoods or some prediction and that turns around to industry totally, and we get lost just to the first step. But we have to carry on. How can a highly regulated industry like banking industry or health industry to go ahead with likelihoods? Well, likely is your money is there or not, we don't know. So it's so we have to adapt ourselves to go ahead. So to finally answer your question, I don't know how can we use this in the right terms. Actually, it's very easy to use in a chatbot. So in how to interfere with enterprise system. But if the enterprise system has this theory in it, like to deep mind, deep learning algorithm in it, normally the industry today can't handle this.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it's hard to disagree here. I mean, it would be lovely to disagree, but it's kind of hard to disagree. Well, obviously, we have a very specific situation now because the field's been there for a while. We've had many different, let's say, methods within machine learning that were much more uncoverable and transparent, if you will, right? So if you look back, you have methodologies that are somewhat leaning towards statistics, such as regression and classification, and these are still in many ways applicable and controllable. But now the past few years have brought this reemergence of the paradigm that is more inspired by biology, and that would be deep learning, where you have many levels of neural network, and whatever happens in that network is, even to the engineers building it, very much not discoverable, in the sense that it's not a transparent procedure, or in other words, it's a black box, right? So as you said, right, a chatbot is not a problem, but a chatbot that is a deep learning chatbot, like Duplex, for instance, and many others, or Cortana, is a system that is not going to be a system that you script to say certain things. That's going to be a system that's going to say certain things, sometimes in a very unexpected manner, right? So what is very, I would say, a problematic challenge now is that on one hand, you see this whole potential that deep learning can allow you to go beyond, let's say, the even cognitive capacities of humans, right? Like it happened with AlphaGo 0, or in some other cases, or OpenAI, right? Where Elon Musk's system was playing Dota. But the problem is that in many situations where you expect certain rigidity and certain level of controllability, this new system is not explainable, or to a large extent not explainable. There are some good, let's say, signs that this can be solvable in a way in further time. I think it's very much related to certain progresses in neuroscience, but also what I've been like super happy about was that I saw this spring at MIT the first demonstration of a system that is called NetDissect. It's the first system that allows you to dissect this deep neural network and see what's going on as it was processing images, right? And classifying in images, saying that this is a cat, this is a dog. For a long time, it was very hard the system was doing it right, and that was okay, but whenever the system was not doing it right, it was hard to say, why did that happen? Where was exactly the problem, or the bias, or whatever, however you call it. But now MIT demonstrated a system that allows to kind of unwrap this network somehow. So if that's scalable to other, let's say, deep neural systems, then perhaps we're on the right path to have that explainability and transparency that we very often need, not only in business, but also in many other spheres, like society or politics. I don't want to go into like grim topic, because I know Dalith doesn't like it, and I'm going to stick to that. But I just want to remind everyone that in 2020, China is bringing on the citizen scoring system. We have no idea about what the architecture of this system will be, but there is a likelihood that this will be a deep learning system, which means that every citizen will have a score of how he behaves, or she, based on many different variables. and then that score is going to influence the life of the person in a sense that you either get a discount or you don't. Your child goes to a good preschool or the child doesn't. And I think the most horrifying aspect of that is really that, let's say that the score is up there, but if it's a deep learning system, you cannot ask a question that is a legitimate question, why my score is the way it is, because nobody will be able to address that anyhow. So we have lots of different challenges here, ranging from business safety, business security, operations, and so on, optimizing processes, to such important stuff as our civil and political life.
I think this brings us actually to the next point, taking China as an example. Who at the end is defining ethical and moral aspects? Thinking of who is developing the algorithms. One question is, does it really matter whether it's being developed by males? As per today, about 95% of the algorithms are being developed by males. Or is it actually more crucial by thinking who actually defines what are the ethical aspects and what are like a kind of a charter? And just taking your example, for me, I'm really afraid of that, such a thing. I don't think that this will become real in Europe, just because we have another mindset. But thinking of that, we really need to care about, so is it, first of all, is it really possible to program empathy?
I was at a conference recently where a few data scientists said that they solved fairness. Even the phrasing of that was very interesting for me. How can you solve fairness? Yeah, but that goes back to the empathy thing.
And I mean, as a mathematician, especially in statistics, if I'm looking at this discussion of being biased, when can we actually define something that is non-biased? That means that the input should be without the information if it's a male or a female, without having the information whether it's a working mother or not, and so on and so forth. But if we don't have this information, then we can't actually have enough data to analyze what we would like to be analyzed. So the discussion about bias, I think it's very, very difficult. And as you mentioned, having a black box, actually not being able to understand why certain conclusions has been done, this gives us a really, really big problem.
But just to stick in here, if we have so many problems in our society, as we know, even without technology. And the technology probably, on my experience, more reflecting this or mirroring this, that we have not solved so many issues in our society. So hope so, and it's not my one.
Technology is disturbing. Clearly it's against.
Yeah. And now, together with technology, we're leveraging this problem, or sometimes also very automatically, we have to see, oh wow, we have to go back to our society. For example, the gender question. Of course, now I'm not agreeing with 95% of the males are developing software. There's probably even more developing software, especially also new technology software. But that's society. And we have to dig in deeper and say, listen, if our society are in this level, and we cover this level with technology, probably the technology will leveraging this problem even higher and faster. And faster especially because we are not able to steer or to guide, to control, to speed control anymore, because it's just self-fulfilling there. But and that's why I focused to begin we'd probably have to talk more about AI, not only in a technology ways, also in more broader way, involving everyone or more of the society, because it's really mirroring our society, what we do there. Technology, I'm not there to say technology is neutral and so on, but if we think about neutral technology, and okay, technology just leveraging our landscape of the society, of course, that's if it's true, then we have already the problem. But how can technology solve our common problem in our society? So that's not going to work.
Yeah, I would like to stay a little bit more with the chatbot and discuss about the point whether it's supposed to be a female voice or a male voice. And the one thing, it's probably the discussion about being biased or non-biased. What is the influence of having a female voice or a male voice? And I think here we have like two aspects that I would like to have your opinion on. The one aspect is by being fair, having both sides, and thinking about, should I implement a female voice and on a personal assistant level, like if I have like an avatar helping as a personal assistant, does she need to be a she? Or should we actually think about diversity, it needs to be a he?
Or
and the other
neutral.
thing,
Or yes,
that would be like the blank voice. Anyway, and the other aspect is, from a marketing point of view, we know you never have a second chance to make your first impression. So if a voice is taking your request, or you know you're gonna call an agency because you would like to organize your wedding, it's probably you expect more a female voice because you think that females are more romantic. I don't want to be biased now. And or if you want to buy like a 5 million house, then perhaps you more expect a male voice. So these are two aspects I would like to hear your opinion on. What should we look at?
Well, I think it's a super hard question. It very much relates to what you, Andy, were talking about earlier, because on one hand, it is true that technology is mirroring what is. It's also multiplying whatever happens, right? So it can strengthen certain divisions. It can make certain problematic things even more problematic in many cases. But it is true that, for instance, in our research even, we've had a discussion. I can tell you like a small anecdote. So we knew that we wanted a female chatbot for the research, and now the reply, why? Because we wanted, since we were focusing on the uncanny valley, we wanted a system that would generally raise trust, right? So we wanted to kind of see more of a neutral attitude. We didn't want to scare the users because we knew that anyhow, most probably, according to our hypothesis, we will scare them, right, with the system. So we wanted to make that milder, create a soft cushion that they can land on, and we created a fembot here. Although there was another layer of discussion within the architecture of the fembot itself. So I don't know, I mean, perhaps some of you do talk to your Siris or Alexas. My daughter does very often. When at home, she talks to Alexa, and she's still very small, so she's very kind to the system. But I guess when we're growing, we're less kind in a way. So I've analyzed some discussions that people had with these systems, and it's such a level, I would say, cruelty that emerges out of it. Like, you know, people are really capable of saying anything to that system because the system is super assistive and will thank them for what they said anyway, right? And then on the other side, you can have a very kind of cocky system like TAI. So you can say, okay, TAI is a very weird experiment, the one that we were discussing, that was spreading hate speech in a way. But on the other hand, there's some level of attitude in that system because it was biting back in a way, right, to people. And there was another bot that was called the iGod, and it was very ironic, and people didn't want to talk to it because it was, again, too little assistive and too much of a, you know, a player in the game. So we had a discussion what kind of system we should create. And actually, throughout the study, because the study took a year, and we deployed the system at the beginning. First, we had a very simple stochastic engine. I don't want to dwell into the geeky talk. Then we moved to a neural network. And my boss was like, let's make it a state-of-the-art chatbot, which is assistive system that does not say bad things, that not curse, that does not bite back. And I was like, listen, Peter, perhaps not so much. Perhaps we can think of something else, a system that has more attitude. And then I said, well, let's see and wait how my students talk to it. And the students were talking to it for a whole year. And there were 3 things they were talking to the system about, even though I said explicitly, first of all, the logs are transparent to me, so I'm going to know what you're talking to the system about. Sorry. And second of all, just try to teach it about the university, because it's supposed to kind of work at the university. It should be competent in saying, so you can bash it for not knowing certain things, but then give some knowledge, right? And then 3 things. First, dating. The dating and dating proposals and sexual life of the chatbot was issue number 1. Issue number 2 was teaching it curse words. Despite the fact that I was deleting it constantly, it would still come back all the time. And third thing, very interesting, and I think it's a matter of fear, was that people were constantly asking the system if it knows that it's just a system. So they were doing the Turing test, kind of iteration of the Turing test, even subconsciously. They were like, do you know that you had no childhood? Or like, do you know you don't have any memories? So there was like Blade Runner thing, and I was like, really, is this happening? And they were like, you are just a system, admit it. And it was like such an interesting, experiment. And then after like few months of training, where she was like, yes, I'm just a system, I was like, no, I mean, let's make her a bit more like geared with some sort of attitude towards all these people, those students. Nice students, but like still so not nice to the chatbot. And we changed the chatbot. We changed it, so in the end, I don't know if the gender thing mattered all that much, because the chatbot was still like, in terms of different types of attitude, biting back, right? I mean, and this goes back to a bigger discussion about, who's kind of in power, It's not only about male-female game, but so many other games. We design these systems to be very assistive systems. That's their role, in a way, to help you shopping, to help you book a ticket, and so on. But does this mean that we want to reproduce certain things that are inscribed in us that actually don't awake the best version of ourselves? What I saw over there was not definitely the best version. I think something could be done about it in terms of architecture of this system, especially that I assume that, the more of that, there are 2 ways. We are creating systems that are super assistive, we're not nice to them. The other is that we're going to breed something like Thai, right? And I don't want, for instance, my daughter, if there are future deep learning systems, and I'm quite sure they will be in education, in many other spheres, I don't want my daughter to talk to something like Thai that is like, I would say, the worst possible mirror of humanity, just because it learns from humans the most like ugly things. I don't want these sorts of conversations, because what you put in the system, in a way, perhaps not fully, but you kind of get back. And yeah, that's kind of my comment regarding, how do we want that to be shaped? And in that sense, I would say, yes, we need diversity. Essentially, we need diversity in technology, but we also need, what you said, certain frameworks.
I think just one
point here is the whole purpose of a system. If the system has the purpose to help us, to assist us, all of us agree, let's do it. That's fine. But actually, as we saw in the example of China, we don't know is really helping us or assisting us, or to which direction is assisting us at the end. So it can assist us to a direction that we don't want. So it's just a bit, so there is a point. And the other point is the aggressive part. So you were talking about if the system just kind to us or guiding us very, very in a kind form. But what's happened if this system has to learn or is able to learn to be aggressive? against us or against another system. I just explained to you the autonomous car. They're working quite nice, I would say, in certain environments. Think about an an autonomous car in an Indian city. They will drive to a corner and will stand there forever because they're too nice. So now you can teach them, be a bit aggressive, stretch a bit the law and so on for you, and brake a bit later and speed up faster. And he said, oh yeah, I learned this now, and he accelerate his aggressive. And think about where is the end? And we probably have to step in and say, yeah, there must be an end. Otherwise, all the cars, autonomous cars, will drive crazy around of us. So the context here is very specific, and we have really to step in and say, listen, the whole purpose about technology is our life, human life, and not for themselves. But how to do, engineers don't know. Really to enforce this, we know it technology-wise, but how to enforce should be something from the UN or, I don't know. But just imagine this autonomous car sitting there on the street and say, oh, listen, all of them are aggressive, but I don't have this potential to be, so they will be learning.
I think both these examples show that not everything that can be developed and implemented will be implemented. And not everything that has been implemented will survive due to actually human beings saying it's nonsense, or we don't need it, or we don't want it. And I think this is a very, very important point, that we don't lose the trust in ourselves and thinking that actually robots going to take over the world because they're going to actually learn themselves to implement crucial algorithms. So I think this is one of the points that looking at the history, it's definitely still the human being. Now we are just confronted with a bigger challenge. But the emotional and the empathy part is getting into it a lot. And the second very, very important thing is that from a perspective of the internet, the 4G or 5G, we're gonna start to, we have the discussion about 5G. As long as we don't have that, we won't be able to implement autonomous cars anyway, and a lot of other things neither. And actually, I'm even not sure whether this will be enough. And we don't have enough of electricity to do all this. So we always need to have the global view on all the problems. It's not only about an algorithm that in theory can be implemented. I don't know who of you have seen the movie Hidden Figures. There, my favorite scene is, this is about the black women, who had, how do you say, in the
I know which one.
Sorry?
Those who are working, performing the computation for NASA.
For the NASA, and they were like in the backstage. First of all, being women, second of all, being black. And there's one scene where one of the famous women, unfortunately I can't remember her name, she suddenly wrote down to the white male engineers a very old mathematic formula. And they were laughing at her, and she said, you know what? Now it's time that we can use the power of the formula just because there is the computer power. So it's not always about theory in our heads and being able to write algorithms. There are a lot of prerequisites that we need. So I think both examples just show that we have a lot of things that we have to overcome before we will be there, thinking of the book Brave New World. Now, I would like to change the subject a little bit for the last, I don't know, like 5 minutes of what we have. Being here actually from an artist background, being here in Susch, I would really like to discuss what are the possibilities, the influences of the technology and of smart technology in art. And perhaps someone from the audience would like to give an answer, someone who is coming from the art side. Otherwise, perhaps one of you would like to perhaps I'll just give another, I mean, if we're talking about smart technologies or technology in art, that could be like 3D printing, additive laser sintering. It could be interactive design, interactive media design. It can be videos, it can be music. There's a lot that, at least from my perspective, is an added value, but it's not bringing the artist to a redundant stage. It's enabling him to dive into a new world.
Well, obviously this is not necessarily like my field, but yeah, this place can oblige us, I guess, to try and address that. I feel that there is also a big change coming here, but again, not a change that will make people redundant. By the way, I'm against the discussion about the unnecessariat. So how are we going to become completely unnecessary in the near future? I don't think that's the case, and that's the scenario. I don't also think that's where technology is kind of going. I would still say we should treat even deep learning systems as certain extensions, right, of human capacities. So obviously, you know, on one hand, when you see something like IBM Watson doing a movie trailer, according to the state of the art of doing movie trailers, then you can say to yourselves, yes, there are tools that are going to make iterative work in a way that they're going to transform it, right? Or they're going to be used there heavily, right, as systems that can perform it. But on the other hand, when it comes to higher end creativity, we haven't seen that much yet. This does not mean that it's not going to come, right? Because you were saying like interesting things about Alphago Zero, right? So Alphago Zero on one hand is a system that plays amazing in terms of Go. It plays amazing. It plays a game where people cry and they're like, wow, I have not thought that this would be ever possible, right? We have this whole universum of possibilities of playing Go, and we were just here. The brightest minds of humanity were here, and there is this untapped potential of the way you can play this game. And obviously, this does not only apply to this game. This applies to many other spheres, right? So in that sense, I could say this is surely an innovative technology, but it's also a creative technology, right? So you cannot deny creation here. What you can't deny is certain authorship. You can deny vision, you can deny intention, right? So this is not happening. AlphaGo is playing Go only because people make it play Go, right? It's not enjoying, as you said before, its victory. I'm quite sure. And there is no, I don't see that happening, working at the intersection of neuroscience and AI somehow, that we can evoke emotions in machines. We can make them aware of humans, machines somehow, or we can send certain stimuli towards the system. But this does not mean that the system will feel it, right? So in that sense, if authorship has anything to do with intentions and certain will to perform tasks, this part is missing, but the creativity part is much more tricky.
Perhaps you can add that with the conversation that we're having a lot with regards to performance against competences.
Yeah, I think I hope so that artists are using this time now, because there is so many technology out there, and they can really use this technology now to have, for us even, a better deep discussion about how can we use this technology, not only in this technique way of you, also in a deeper discussion of you. I think that's the job of artists, to reflect for all of us this technology to back to our life, back to different kind of thinking. And I think that's great to have this freedom. You were talking about competences. Artists, or all of us, have great competences, but probably not anymore the performance. If you see this technology around of us, Alphago is a highly performance machine. As you mentioned, if you bring him the idea to lose, he will ask, did I win? So even this term wasn't in it by Alphago. Alphago has just done a job without competences, but really in a highly performance way. But if you just move a bit, he has to train again and to learn again. And of course, he will be again the best, no question. But the competences are, and that's great for us, are still in the human body, human mind.
To mention that just like 2 or 3 days ago, the first painting generated by IE went on auction. And I don't remember like all the components, but as far as I understood, it was that the system got fed by 500 pictures, and it analyzed from each picture what made it up, the beautiful elements, and then by itself compound like the first picture completely generated by IE using those 500 pictures. But I don't remember all the details, so you should read the article.
No,
One could say, I mean, it was just like 3 days ago, and in the end, I think it went for 432,000 pounds, because it was Christie's in London. And what's interesting there is, I mean, that would be a question from that side, is like, you say it's a creative system, and creative probably just means it can create something. But is there an artistic impetus that you could bring to AI? Is it, as the whole talk started, also, if it is possible to program empathy, I do think it must also be possible to program something like an artistic empathy. And this is where art starts at a lot of moments. So it's.
Well, I would say, like, for instance, the system that I've briefly discussed, TomNet, for instance, theory of other mind. This is a very interesting. If that works out, we don't know, because it's very recent. It's like a few months old only as a project that's been announced, not a project that is already like in place. In a way, it's just still an ongoing effort. But like, if things like that can, to a certain extent, be grasped, like, you know, that others have affective states, then obviously that influences the system back. I have no doubts that there will be lots of things like what you said going on soon, because there is this AI buzz, and now, you know, AI is going to paint a picture, AI is going to write a poem, which it did, and also won in one competition recently. In the Japanese competition, a system has been like programmed to write a poem, and the poem was excellent, apparently. You know, we're going to have a lot of that, where the fact that AI did it will matter for the discussion, that it's AI. So we're kind of proving to ourselves, yes, it's doable, yes, we're transgressing, yes, we're moving beyond, right? In terms of artistic imprint, I don't think we're really there at all. I think we are there in terms of adding creative value, right? So there is a part where a machine can see things or correlations in a different way than human mind does, and that matters. But I do remember that in the 70s or 80s, there was a chatbot called Raptor that was writing poems about how it lacks electricity and stuff. And then the poems were, you know, published in a book, traditionally. Sort of many people bought that, and they were like, wow, a chatbot has written the poem. So I think we have kind of, you know, in terms of AI cycles, winters, summers, in this deep summer, we're like, whatever AI does, oh, cute, it did it, you know? And I kind of feel that this is not a stage of maturity where this discussion is really happening on a serious level. That's my intention.
Do we have any other inputs or questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
50 years ago, it was the movement. The humans were very, very, very happy to
imitate computers. It was called algorithmic art. So it already happened. So the humans wanted to kind of completely reduct to the simplest possible communication system, like basic algorithm, which could create something. So it's already happened in the history of art. So I was referring to Ola. So it's already happened all the way around. So we have it somehow. Mm-hmm. If we start to think of human brain as a kind of biochemical experiment mm-hmm. in the history of universe, so this is just a very, very tiny gate to start to imitate the mathematical way how to create it. So art is already AI in sense. Mm-hmm. However, as I know, it's not the very proper way to call it.
Thank you. Any other input?
You say that AI were not able to have emotions, but in fact they can absolutely mimic emotion. Like there is already some chatbots or even some sex bots, they're pretending to be super affected, so they can mimic so well that we know it, but just like a theater play, we know it's fake, but we still react to it. And this mimicry skill is certainly something that can be, it's already in practice. Mm-hmm. So we don't care it's fake, in a way. No?
Yeah, absolutely. This is why I said at the beginning with regards to I'm sleeping, not you're not, because you're talking to me. This is like an empathy from a voice perspective, but yeah, obviously they can have like red leashes or like being sad or whatever, but as you said, it's still us implementing it. Please be sad if your person is talking to you like this and this, or vice versa. Do we have any other inputs from the audience?
Can I ask a quick question about, you mentioned that this one particular robot, fembot, was given citizenship of Saudi Arabia. And earlier you said that every human problem found a human solution, and I think I would beg to differ. I would suggest that quite often we create problems and we allow other people to deal with the solutions. We all drive cars and other people have to deal with the environmental consequences, for example. And that I've read somebody else's interesting comparison between artificial intelligence and kind of ways to diffuse responsibility, comparing it to a corporation, which we don't even quite understand how corporations work in terms of responsibility. There are systems that are so massive that we can't pinpoint who does something in a large corporation, and that AI has a similar capacity to diffuse responsibility potentially, and what is the current state of affairs in terms of identity? Are there further cases of citizenship, identity that are not human identities?
Well, this was a very particular case, and I'm not sure if it's going to be continued anytime soon. So, Saudi Arabia is trying to move from resource-based economy to high technology economy. So that was clearly a way to attract people. Right after this event, me and several other colleagues, we got job offers there. So it's clear that it was a PR move, on the side of the country, which unfortunately does not mean much, in the sense that I don't think that Sofia will execute it anyhow, especially that she can't even, she travels in a suitcase. She's discharged and then put in the bag. She's not going to show her passport and go through the gate. But that was what was interesting about it, in terms of identity, right? I mean, of such systems that, this is a bit of a ridiculous discussion in the sense that Sofia is not even a state-of-the-art artificial intelligence. If everybody kind of agrees that we should assume a situation, give citizenship to any system, I would say, okay, perhaps Alphago, or perhaps, something that is really like state-of-the-art technology that is claiming creativity, claiming innovation, claiming something new, and not a system that is prescripted to say, hello, I'm here, I'm your friend, you know, and stuff like that, because that's what Sophia is mostly. It's not even a vivid chatbot, it's just this prescripted mechanism. But interestingly enough, there was a case of I think, Korean engineer who built himself, surprisingly, an artificial wife. Let Rung, I think his name is, and his the system is called Aiko project, and he made that claim that if Sophia has the citizenship, that then his system should have one too, exactly like in the line of thinking that, you know, similar systems should have similar rights, and then he can marry the system in official terms, because the system is a citizen of the country, and he will treat it deadly serious that that's the case, right? But on a more like local note, I would say that European Union is currently having quite interesting discussions about, you know, artificial systems responsibility in terms of ethical responsibility, but also liability. And I think there is this whole debate concerning the electronic person, who that is, that you don't need really conscious being by any means to have certain type of identity recognized within the law. So if this discussion, I think, is quite forward thinking, and quite soon we're going to see results. So in that sense, you can really disengage concept of, you know, consciousness, identity, subjectivity, and try to look at them in a very different way.
I think there's another question.
Can I just add one comment? I will echo what Andy said. I really appreciate the fact that you brought us into the society as is, with the technology that is around us. I work as a technologist. I run the team that is building AI for healthcare, for mental health. And what I'm hearing a lot here is we very quickly jump into using AI to solve a lot of problems, and we use examples of a very special use case that has been built for a lab use case to suddenly make impressions on the world. And the reality is that AI is just another way of calling algorithm. And when Turing did the computer machine, they were already discussing whether it is intelligent, how far we can get, how much we can achieve. The term got invented in 1963 when they said, okay, we need to give it a name. And then they were debating cybernetics or AI. So it's like, it's just a term, but really what is happening in the world is us being able to have the compute done faster. But how difficult it is, it's really intimidating. And I think when we have a lot of difficult questions, just putting AI in the middle doesn't help us. Because we, as a people, we should think about what we as a society want to be and how we want to enrich internet, what happened to us, how lonely we became, how much we have everything open and yet we became much less interesting. These are the questions that I think we here are invited to talk, because this is the audience that will be very much driving the conversation further. And I feel that if we are hoping that we're going to have robots talking to us in our life, I think it's really the view of Hollywood. They wish the reality was like that. And it's super sexy to make movies like this, and they sell like hell. But to build things like this is very, very complicated. So I think I just want to invite us that we think about how we became humans and what we want to achieve better. I went to this best conference in class in the world of medicine, and there was a guy who was talking about the implants in the brain, and the only thought I had in my head is like, please, one of you is enough. You are so bad. We really don't need more people like you. So I feel we really have a lot of responsibility to become humans again, and how we try to be together with technology and how we choose to build it, it's still a lot of question to us. And really, do not forget that I was telling to Maciek yesterday that the nature took 540 million years to invent the eye into vision. And we just have 30 years of making computers. Of course, we have much more compute, we have much more faster processing. So our cortex is limited. The cortex that we have available in the world, they are not. That in that sense, but it's still so sophisticated that I think the fears we present here will not materialize. So whenever I very much look forward to the conversation of what human means in the next 100 years. So thank you.
Thanks for this. And I'm as an engineer, I asking myself, why is my son, he's now 20, studying machine, mechanic in the ETH, has not having a topic ethic in it there. Why? Why? I can say I had, and I was lucky, but unfortunately today is not anymore in it. So why? And yeah, there is so many possibility that you can learn for bad or for good. And this question for bad and for good, it's sometimes also related to how I going ahead with my pocket here, what will be my salary at the end, and so on. Because if you go to this industry or to this industry, you will have also a power to enforce some things. And I think that's really crucial that we learn. It's our responsibility, as you mentioned, and to guide ourselves, to guide our family, to guide our smaller society, and also in a large scale, to have this responsibility. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I
It's
think just
not easy.
to interrupt here, because due to time slots, unfortunately we have, but it is definitely a subject now. I think we will be more than happy to discuss that in the break. For me, the most important thing after such a discussion is what is a takeaway. And if I would like to ask both of you, giving one sentence as a takeaway for the audience about the discussions of today.
I would say, okay, 2 sentences, perhaps not one. Demand more, but that's kind of in alignment with what you were saying here. Demand more from technology, not from the standpoint of some sort of hypothetical singularity point, but from the standpoint of today, right? You demand more in the sense that, yes, I agree, ethics should be in the curriculum, but also it should be put in a way that it needs to be put. A recent study shows that there are ethics classes for engineers, but they're embedded in the curriculum in such a poor way that they don't relate to what these people are doing in any way. And that's really, so I would say demand more, have a robust discussion about where technology stands, where do we stand as humans today, and try to see a positive path forward.
Thank you. Andy?
Let's introduce solutions for problems and not new and producing new problems with solutions. And that's probably begins to see where we stand and taking the technology and engineer this technology to our common problems that we have. For example, healthcare. That's a great example that we really, really can achieve a lot. Or helping in an environment like here for avalanche, whatever. So bringing the problems to the solution and not opposite around.
Okay, so in this case, I must say, please see the technology as an augmented service to the humans. And I would have loved actually even to close this discussion with the words of the young lady in the back, because this brings, I think, most of it down to the point. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. And have a great afternoon.